Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who never forgot the vows we made to each other 7 years ago.
Tim Longo. Yeah, I thought that might be a candidate.
Yeah.
Sheik's speech at the end of I guess you haven't quite got there yet.
I haven't quite got there yet. Yeah, that'll be spoiler for the end of the water temple. I have not quite got the water temple.
You're almost there.
I'm very close. Very close. Yeah.
But he gets even more poetic. He/she gets
Shika. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Shika.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, they fully committed to the Ruta thing, which, as I said, continues to be the case in the future. So, interesting. But Water Temple, the infamous, notorious.
I should say Ocarina of Time for those who are somehow joining us in the middle of this. Welcome if you are. Yeah. But we're discussing Ocarina of Time. We are in week 4 already, I think. Maybe week 5.
This is 5.
Wow. Yeah, this one's going to be the longest series we do, I think, because we're going to be 2 more weeks on this. So,
but like we said, we're just kind of relish. We're soaking into the warm bath of it all, and just letting the water. I was going to keep going with that.
I'm not gonna, I don't know. Yeah.
No, I was going to say let the water get lukewarm and eventually cold because we stayed in the bath for too long.
I see. Okay, you're going that way. No, I'm figuring this is Japan, so the bath is heated.
There we go. Nice.
Anyway, let's before we get to the Water Temple, we have a bunch of other stuff to talk about. The one topic you had left over from last time was Hyrule Field itself and sort of how it works structurally. And you had sort of tantalizingly said, well, let's we need a sort of Hyrule Field here as a design terminology. And I thought it was probably worth re-elaborating and re-talking about how it works for the structure of things.
Yeah, it's there, throughout, I don't know, at least from my experience and career throughout development history, there's always those games that inadvertently create terms because they're innovating, trailblazing, the first of, or at least given credit for the first of, doing something, that actually transforms, not to sound too cheesy, but transforms games in some way. And so because they're the first, oftentimes there isn't a term for that kind of stuff yet. And so, the thing that happens in the game ends up sometimes being a term, and we jokingly talk about Dark Souls quite a bit on this podcast is for various reasons, but they're sort of it's become its own sort of description of a type of design, its own.
Right. I mean, it's particularly amusing since neither of us have played it.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm not Dark Souls. I played some of Demon Souls, but you talk enough.
I finished Demon Souls, but I did not.
Well, then I mean, it's you when you talk enough about certain concepts, you definitely get to understand what they are. But with Hyrule Field specifically at the time, there were definitely 2D games, including the previous Zeldas, that had some of this structure. But I think when it comes to 3D world design, especially level design, there wasn't a lot of examples because pretty much things were linear. There were some hub and spokey kind of situations that were generally kind of more meta structures than they were literal. And the thing that Ocarina of Time, at least to my memory, the one that actually got the credit for this structure is Ocarina of Time. And Hyrule Field, became this sort of description of a type of world structure that was a shortcut for people to use. We definitely used it at LucasArts, and I remember it being the case at GDC as well, where it's you just need a Hyrule Field here, which really is just the beginnings of open world, right? In a way, it's this vast hub And in Ocarina of Time's case, it very much is a hub and spoke structure. But Hyrule Field is not just a town or a one room sort of, home base or something, right?
Yeah, it's not like the Mario 64 castle, which is
right,
maybe a little bit bigger than a room, but not much, really.
Right.
It's a couple of floors and there's some outside, but generally speaking, it's a pretty small space.
Yeah, and you can and as we talked about with Mario 64, you could see the progression for them, right? That is almost like a prototype for this. And Hyrule in 2D form always did have that sense of overland, right? Or that sort of the overland versus the dungeons and that kind of concept. And so you can see them very logically getting to the place where they've needed to figure out a way to have that same feel. But I think one of our emailers last time or the time before kind of mentioned a good point about like sort of how vacant it is compared to the 2D games, which I think is a really good point. And there were limitations to it, of course, but at the same time, it still gave you that feel where you leave, especially leaving the forest for the first time as a child, and you come to Hyrule Field, and it's at the time it's mind-blowing, it's glorious, because you're standing there and you're like, holy, I can just run around, I can just run. It's like, and I see the landmarks, right? It's the early sort of blueprint for landmarking, big kind of open areas, right? Because
Disney style, right?
Great examples with the castle and the mountain and the ranch, right? And you mentioned last time of sort of like how they're culling certain things to make sure that they have good blockers. So it still gives you that sense of expanse, but it's not, it's still possible to render. But anyway, like Hyrule Field became that formula for a lot of us of like wanting to achieve something like that, right? So to give context for LucasArts specifically, and really games of that time, because the N64 just come out, the correlation there would have been Shadows of the Empire, right? Which is essentially a level by level linear sort of dark forces, on kind of game. It was third person, but that kind of like legacy, right? And so there was no need, though they did some cool stuff with flying missions that eventually became Rogue Squadron, but there was no need there, and there was no like vocabulary, for how to do that in sort of those spaces. You had the Dooms of the world, around that time, and we've played a lot of the games in that era, the big ones, but really nothing like this structure. So Hyrule became its own sort of thing that, we might call it early open world at this point, or hub and spoke, but just Hyrule specifically is such a vast. And then you play something like Breath of the Wild.
TIE Fighter tries to do something sort of similar, but again, it is just that single room, right? It's just there's an entry room that you come in, you name your pilot, and then there's but then you're in that sort of like one screen. Here's all the things you can do in this game interface, right? And of course, it's a different sort of game because you're not always, in character or what have you, but it is sort of similar. It forms a sort of similar functional use, right? I mean, it does the sort of same thing, but it's just very like, this is a UI. Whereas in a 3D world, you want the world to show you its affordances, I guess, and what, where everything's going to be and all that stuff.
It's physically representing your choice space for your big macro decisions, and then what's more, which they even show in the attract mode when you just have the game running, they show Epona, right? And they show you riding Epona. Yeah. And so what's more is you have, which I still haven't gotten to that step for some reason. I still haven't figured out. I don't have the song still, even. I think I need to go back to Child Link to do it. But once you have Epona, I mean, you're changing the nature of Hyrule Field yet again, right? Yeah. So it's again that great escalation of of running around through it. So it feels very vast because you're this child running through this big open area, and with the way that they use the fog and the sort of The distance culling and stuff like that is interesting because it makes it obviously feel much bigger than it is. It's always funny as a level designer, or maybe watch dev diary, videos of your favorite games, of like seeing them zoom out in the tool, looking at sort of the geometry of a level, and you realize how small it really is. Like that's a hilarious thing in like a World of Warcraft or something, right? It takes so long to run from point A to point B, but then when you look at the level itself, it's like it doesn't look that big.
Right. Well, so I mean, when I watched Republic Commando and saw how they worked with levels, we talked with Dave and well, I guess it was specifically Dave, but also Jesse, like, them pulling out and being like, this is where this encounter takes place. And it feels really big when you're in it. It's nothing, right? There's nothing there. It's very funny.
So all the different tricks you can do, it's just such everything's so interrelated to give you a sense of scale. But then you get Epona and you're like, holy, I'm free, like I feel it's like it feels amazing, and so, so just the escalation of that being compounded with the design of Hyrule Field, and then like for instance, I assume it's like the desert temple or whatever that ends up where they mentioned something about a desert. Yesterday, finally, I kind of left as an adult. I left Lake Hylia after finishing the water temple, and I had never come from that direction into Hyrule Field before.
You're right. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm running through there and I see the ranch from a different perspective. And then I see over to the right, there's this other section that I literally haven't even seen yet, right. And I didn't go over there to investigate it because it wasn't really sending me in that direction. But still the concept that I'm Hyrule Field in the grand scheme of things isn't that big, but I just hadn't gone to the opposite side of it before. And so you get this sense of like, and to be honest, it felt like it's the same feeling I get playing Breath of the Wild when you get to a new sort of region. You're like, wow, I moved from the snowy area to this sandy area, and it's just you can see the inspiration for Breath of the Wild in this game, like and obviously in all the Zelda games before to some degree, but I think this one specifically, you just see some of the sort of rule set or the DNA, if you will, or something that for 3D Zelda at least, that they all really were based on. So it's really fascinating and cool. And Hyrule Field specifically, I just think had a big, significant impact on all of us.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I definitely remember as a young Mr. Rhythm coming out onto Hyrule Field and being pretty blown away. Even though it was a few years later, and I think it also has the sense of a place that you're learning and like you have a sense exactly where to go when you come out of it. I mean, you have a map in the corner and all that, but it reminds me of a GTA 3 sort of feeling, but it's a little more contained. So it's easier to sort of get a sense of where you're going. And, you see these places from multiple angles more quickly. In fact, in the first, I remember I went down, you can remember when we talked about as Child Link doing the Zora section with Jabbu inside Jabbu-Jabbu, and I had walked down to Lake Hylia and had not found my way into it. As it turns out, I think you actually can get into it from that direction. It's just faster to do it the other way. So it might not be necessary to have the scale so you can dive further.
Yeah, but you need this scale in Jabbu-Jabbu.
You need the scale you need to get the scale so that you can get down to her letter, probably.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right. Because
finding that letter is like a needle in a haystack if you're not. Yeah. But yeah. Because there's like a ladder that you can climb up down there.
Right. But you can't see that coming from. That's another thing that, I mentioned Disney earlier. There are paths that you don't see until you come from the opposite direction. And then you go, oh, if I can come out this way, there must be another way, another way back in, right? Because there's no owl when you're adult Link to carry you back. You're just going to have to walk. So there's that as well. So I don't know. There's a lot of really cool stuff that they do with that.
They're the masters of sight lines and feed, telegraphing things through sight lines. It happens all through the water temple as well. I can see, like, I don't want to jump ahead, but I can definitely see why the water temple is so notorious. Cause because I don't think I had played it before in my previous versions. I do think I stopped before it. But there's still some amazing design in there, I think, despite its flaws. But yeah,
we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Let's another thing that you had done, and this sort of ties in, is you had gone back to Goron City, right? So you have the opportunity to, because you can just kind of go to the field really at any time and run around and do side stuff, which, speaking of which, side note, we will spend some time after we've done sort of all the main temples. Before we finish the game, we're going to do some running around and doing whatever side content we feel like, just so people know. But yeah, so you had gone back to Goron City and discovered that people were happier there now that you.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked last time about, which is a common theme in Zelda games, of quote unquote, fixing the world, or like, improving the situation in every region to make it, because of the curse from Ganondorf, etc. And so they do that. They commit to that in one way by, with Mount Doom, for instance, or Death Mountain. Sorry, I always do that. I always swap those. And for Death Mountain, they do that visually, obviously in the skybox, by showing the mountain physically change. Right, it has that sort of red, fiery swirling going on, a vortex around it, and then when you kill the boss and come out, it's gone. So the mountain looks more normal. But they go the step further because they've set up in the story, and I haven't gone back to Zora's Domain yet, but I assume it's the same, and the forest, same thing. They set up in the story that of each of the dungeons that the inhabitants of the town have been either scared, or they're, in the forest case, they're scared and they're kind of hiding, I think is what happened. Yeah. They can't go outside. They're in their houses. In the Fire Temple, it's obviously they're all captured, and that's actually part of the story of the actual dungeon. And then when you come back, you don't need to go back, I don't think, necessarily to Goron City, but when you do, all those people you saved are there now, right? Because you saved them, and they're all kind of, they all basically say the same thing, but a couple of them don't. And so you just get this sense of like, not only did you fix the mountain, but you actually impacted these people,
Oh, and now we can go back now that we have the long shot.
Yeah. What do you mean? Oh, go back to...
There's a side room on one of the lower floors that I couldn't remember how to get across, but now I just got the long shot, and now
I did it. I just did that. Yeah. Okay, unfortunately, that was a bit of a disappointment for what's back there, but you should still do it. Yeah. But yeah, long shot. I also went back to the crater and found one piece of heart, and maybe and I found another fairy temple. So I went back up there to. You don't really need that long shot, I think, but
I might have already found that fairy temple.
You get extra. She gives you more magic power. Your magic bar.
Yep.
Gets bigger.
Yeah, I did. I got that one already.
Yeah. So, and now that you have the hammer too, like I'm smashing everything I can, all the boulders and stuff, and so, So anyway, it's just cool, that they commit, often.
Those are really Metroid influences as well, right? I mean, get a new tool, go everywhere you have been, and try to use the tool again. So,
well, and again, that goes back to the brilliance of, and I still it's kind of like playing this game. It's still like, it's reminding me of this boggling notion that I still have of why more games don't steal the object-oriented quest design. Because what's more is like those tools, the Metroid tools you're getting, are also parts of your quests, right? And so to segue into that topic really quick, and it's not long, but I wanted to add to my point, my point about object-oriented quest design from last episode. The other cool thing that I love about it, and I've always loved about Zelda games, is you have your slots in the UI of everything you're going to potentially get there, and they're empty at the beginning, and you're basically filling them with these objects that are both gameplay, like you said in Metroid's case, their gameplay, their quests, their progression, their lock and keys, they're everything kind of wrapped in this really nice little bundle. And then you just see those slots getting filled in and the sense of accomplishment versus like an RPG, like especially Western RPG. It's like, okay, I'm getting a level, which is an abstract concept. It's basically right. A number of points. I'm getting numbers, points.
Yeah, I'm getting some hit points. My skills have slightly improved. Yeah, I was thinking of like
it's statistical.
Even Horizon Zero Dawn, right? Which I loved, has and shout out to Troy. But there's a progression system in that game. Is it that one that has it all kind of mapped out? I can't remember now if I'm confused.
I've only played the beginning. I'm actually intending to play it this next couple of weeks.
Everything's kind of visible, and like I want to spend some points on, it's just it's like, oh, well, and it's skills, it's cool things that you're able to do, and button combinations or whatever. Combos, as we call them around here, to much disappropriation, but
but it's through an economy. You're saying,
right?
And statistical,
you're getting a certain number of points whenever you do things, and it's an economy, and it's not literally like I have this cool object now. Although there's some of that too. So in that game,
a lot of them do hybrids. The other funny example that I always use for this is that I think in many ways is very Zelda and Metroid, obviously, and they've admitted to that, and is the Arkham games, especially Arkham Asylum, and Arkham is basically a 3D Metroid. But they also have a progression system where you're getting XP, which is just so silly. Right. But it still gives you that, the reason they do it is it gives the player that sort of rush of getting points,
Right.
But
that they can spend, right?
And so I still think that I still wonder if it's a bit of a misconception, though, that's required for the endorphin rush that you're getting from that stuff. RPGification.
I much prefer having a new lens with which to view the world. Like, having a new literal tool of like, like you mentioned, the hammer or whatever, and or the long shot. Now the long shot is great because it's like, oh, right. Because I'd forgotten there was one, because I got the hook shot. And was like, I must be missing something about that lava room that I just mentioned. Like, there must be just something I missed there. That some switch or something. And I, because I'm more rushing around, and so I'm like, okay, well, I'll come back and figure that out. But now it's like, oh, I have a whole new way to look at the world, right? Yeah. That's way more exciting than I do more damage when I swing whatever. Like, I don't really care about that.
Right.
Most of the time, it's like that hasn't really changed how I view the world, right? It's just that I can take on things that I couldn't before, normally in sort of Western games. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the common, this ended up being a bigger topic than I thought it was going to be, but I think the common reason behind that, having, thought about this in games I've worked on, is I think the conception is like economy based progression like that tends to be good because the developers feel like it's good to have the player be able to choose what tools they want. So in Batman's case, it's like,
well, and it's also it's conceptually endless too, right? So it fits in well with retention for multiplayer modes and things like that as well, right? So
for sure. But I'm even talking
there's a lot of reasons to like it for sure. Yeah.
But I'm talking about, take that out. I'm just talking about like a straight single player. Just use Arkham Asylum as an example. Like if you do everything you can in that, you will eventually unlock everything. But with an economy, you're choosing which things to unlock when, to some degree. Like they also have the Metroid aspect of where there's certain things they will just hand you because they want you to have that tool now. It's kind of smoke and mirror psychology stuff, to be honest. It's not necessarily required. And in Zelda's case, the disadvantage of the object-oriented design, especially in this game, is that there's an inherent linearity to what tools you're going to get when.
Right.
Now that, I mean, this is a different era. That's where Link Between Worlds comes in. for me, in that was one of their earliest. I don't even think it was the first time they were dabbling with it. It might have been another. No, it probably was
Skyward
the first
Sword.
one. Is that the first time that they? But did Link Between Worlds come out before or after Skyward Sword?
Oh, after? I think after. Yeah.
And they had rentable gear in Skyward Sword.
Yeah, in fact, that was part of the complaint I think people had was.
Yeah, see, I don't buy it. Like, I think, like, I mean, I can see the complaint for the super uber purists who like the linearity, but again, Link Between Worlds is like, you can rent any of the things right away, you know, and it's brilliant because it's, well, not everything. I think there's a couple things that are cordoned off for, I forget how they do it, but most of the tools you can get right away.
Yeah, Skyward Sword is 2 years before.
Okay, yeah. So they were experimenting there, but then the natural, you know, essentially, as we talked about, where this all ends up is Breath of the Wild, where they give you all of your core elements very early, and then it just becomes where the player choice comes into that, because you don't really get you get through the Divine Beast, you get some stuff, but you have your core abilities pretty much from the beginning. Is the player choice comes from combining those in different situations. How do you use them creatively? You know what I mean? So they shifted the sort of tool set in a different way. But anyway, yeah, I just like play Link Between Worlds.
Final point in progression. Yeah, I see now. I've got like 4 of these dang things to play. But the final thing I was going to say about the progression systems is that while the upside is you get to choose those things that you want to kind of lean into, the downside is that there gets to be a point at which you've already leaned in to all the things you like to do, and now you have all the things that you chose not to left to buy, right? You know, the stuff that you don't care about really. I mean, you at that point, some players will be like, well, you know what? I've gone and done all the stealthy stuff for so long. Now I'll just try the thug it up, you know, style of play or what have you, right? So the more brawny, etc.
Thug it up,
man.
I'm gonna try the thug it up style.
Thug it up style.
Okay.
Yep. Now that I'm done with Knucklehead Stealth, it's time for Thug It Up play.
Yeah, you failed at Knucklehead Stealth, so you better thug it up now because it's all your only choice.
Yep.
What the hell? Yeah, agreed. Yeah, usually the things you didn't choose lose meaning, you know, and
right.
The funny thing is at that point also
the linearity for Zelda. I just wanted to make sure we didn't lose sight of the downside of the progression system.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, and I call it a downside. I mean, it's not really like we're on the podcast. Right. We tend to be critical of things that we're playing, no matter what they are. I just wanted you know, a PSA on this game is still incredible. You know, like there's flaws, right? And we can we can see where they had not yet discovered some of the brilliance that they will have in future Zeldas as a team and as a company, that they haven't quite figured out certain things, especially in this section that we'll talk about with order of operations on some things, that they don't make those mistakes in the future. But they had to find them out at some point, right? They just learn from them. But anyway, yeah.
All right. Well, let's move then from all of those sort of cleanup items to the ice cavern and kind of get back on the critical path here for the game. We had said via Twitter that we'd be doing 2 more, maybe just to the show notes. I don't actually remember putting it on Twitter now that I say it. That we just do 2 more dungeons this time, and it turned into sort of 1.5 because they're sort of related. The ice cavern is not as complex as the water temple, but it is sort of critical path and a dungeon that you have to do. I actually did a 3rd dungeon because I did the windmill, the pool, the well dungeon as well.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah. I thought for some reason I was getting an inkling that was going to be the next critical path, but it's not critical path.
It's not. I think it's completely optional dungeon. I don't think you need to do it. I don't think anything you get in there is required. I could be wrong about that. There is an item in there that I did get that is a quest, you know, a quest, object-oriented quest thing that's on your, you know, on your equipment.
Yeah.
I just don't know that it's required. We haven't come across how it's required, if it is. So,
okay. Well,
it seems to be only useful in that dungeon, or only explicitly useful in that dungeon, but I could be wrong. I don't remember well enough.
Yeah. Okay.
If it's necessary.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by it. I mean, I talked to the old lady, and she's giving some hints about that well, but I haven't figured out what to do with it yet.
Cool. But yeah, let's go to the ice cavern. I mean, this is where Navi's sort of pointing you to once you finish Mount Doom. To head. I mean, it's even got a ring, Mount Doom, Death Mountain.
Oh, nice. Yeah, the foreboding red ring that's
exactly
sort of on top of it. Yeah.
But you have to go back to the Zora. So you're basically doing things in the same order that you did them as a child. At this point in the game still, and it's not actually until our next section that we'll go to places that are entirely new to us in that way. So you have to go to the ice cavern, which is where I don't know what happened to Jabbu-Jabbu. There's been no discussion Jabbu-Jabbu for me yet, so I don't know what's going on there.
I think Ganondorf ate him. He carved him up, and they used all parts of the Jabbu-Jabbu.
Fine by me if I never see that thing again. And you have to jump across a bunch of sort of spinny ice flows to get across to the ice.
I mean, one thing to mention about that though is they're dabbling with, which Mario did as well, but they're dabbling with buoyancy and I guess in that they're not working with cold yet there, because you don't take damage from being in the cold, which I was actually surprised they held back from doing the whole you get damaged in cold thing. But those platforms I think are still pretty impressive for, even though it's simple and you're just jumping across them. Like if you stay too long on one side of them, then you'll slide off of them, so it's that's what it was. They're dealing with their slippery surfaces as well as buoyancy as well, as well as some physics there. So it's pretty at the time, pretty neat stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, it's definitely a fun little, I remember this time, I don't know if I just still had the skills, but I kind of nimbly jumped across all of that and had no problem with it. But I can remember the first time, maybe the first two times I played it, just like banging my head, even having, a decade or two more of game playing under my belt, still running around and falling in the water a billion times and being like, come on.
Yeah.
This time I didn't really have any trouble getting in there. I had kind of forgotten that this ice cavern was a thing. I forget a lot about games, as it turns out. Whenever I play a game again, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, this is in there.
I think Zelda's in general, right? Like they all blend together.
They do blend together. I'm also like, maybe I should play Wind Waker again.
Me too.
Oh my God. Because it's like, yeah, I remember loving that game, but I don't actually remember a lot specific about it other than the sailing, the general look. But and going under to sunken Hyrule. Where was I going? The ice cavern. Yeah. So this is a weird one, because I think this is the only time you get a tool you can really only use in the dungeon, or sort of, I mean, I guess you could in theory go back and fill as many bottles you want as frequently as you want, but you get that blue fire that you basically has use only inside the dungeon.
Yeah, I'm wondering. Well, you have to use it on the
king, have to use it on the king, right?
And then you can use it to open the store.
And open the store, right? But it's all in the domain.
I'm interested to see if there is another spot, though.
Yeah,
you don't think there's another optional spot someplace?
I don't remember there being one, but like I said in pre-show, there's a number of things in this game that I never found this time. Yeah. So, which was true of Kingdom Hearts as well, actually, as it turns out. So these replays, there's value even in playing these games again, even when they take a lot of hours. But it is a bit of a weird little mini thing, because it's like an elaborate.
A pretty elaborate, let's see, what would be an equivalent, like getting the, I mean, getting the tunic, the red tunic, was all that you needed to do there was to stop that one rolling Goron, right?
Yep.
To talk to him, and you got the red tunic. So it's like, this is a whole like sub dungeon and a new mechanic. And the bottle thing, like I had 2 full bottles of red potion at the time. And I was like, I bet you I have to use the bottle. I don't want to waste this potion. So I was like, damn it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a fairy. I had 2 fairies. I had to do the same thing. It's like, and you can't, well, maybe you can. I can't remember if you can use the fairy if you're full health, but I think I was full health. I was like, really? I guess I'll do that. And yeah, I had the same problem. I probably wasn't full health. There's enough stuff in there that damages you. But yeah, I had forgotten all about it. I like the area generally. There's a lot of interesting sort of stuff. I mean, one of the things you mentioned, sort of the physics and the ice and the sliding, there is sort of that change of control makes you have to deal with things like the spinning fan and timing, and like I'm sliding around now, and you probably have enough hearts at this point that it's not a big deal, but it's still just, frenetic and dangerous feeling.
Well, similar to, I think wasn't there some ice stuff? Yeah, there was ice stuff in Mario. So they were fooling with that already. But the thing about it is that probably some people it would dawn on players at the time that this was the case, but we talked about it, I think in the first episode. It's a subtle, like brilliant move because of the controller, right? This is their first analog stick. And so what an analog stick does when you have slippery ice physics is it allows the player for the first time to meter their movement, and because you don't want to go too far or too fast or slip off of the edge. There's that one room where you're pushing that one sliding block, you have to do it in a certain order so it doesn't slide off of into the void. But same thing for you, like you kind of like need to just jostle yourself behind and not fall off. And you have an analog stick to do that with. And that didn't exist before. So they're, again, brilliantly marrying this new concept of an analog stick with the design of the game. And it's just like, it just blows my mind. It's like, it's on such a high, I know we gush over this stuff all the time, especially Nintendo stuff. And that's sort of the point of the podcast, but it just like, it's so humbling. And so like, they just are on another level. They're on another plane, with how they make games. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, no,
it's fantastic. They really are nailing it.
Yeah, so with the blue flame specifically, it was interesting to me that they had, let's see, they haven't done this yet other than the note in the bottle. So they know, again, I just like I'm going to gush again. I just gushed and now I'm going to gush again. Going back to the bottle design, like I know it's so dumb for me to like obsess over the bottle design, which is super dumb, but because they're just bottles, right? But when you really think through what's going on there, it's like they've given you one critical path bottle. It's analog in nature because you can have more than one bottle, so you can actually have as many blue flames as you have bottles for. It's a receptacle. You have to make a decision, like I had to do because my bottles were full. Yours were as well, and so you're like, oh shoot, and it's multi-purpose, so I can put lots of different things in bottles. And so,
a fish, I can have a fairy, I can have a Poe,
right?
I can have a bug,
and the bug,
a red potion, yeah,
right. And they all have different purposes, and in fact, some cases, like I think the bugs and the fishes, those can be used for different purposes themselves, so you actually you have this thing where you can carry these objects that we keep talking about around and you make decisions about it. So it's like, again, a nice subtle way where like those sorts of decisions in a lot of games are just an inventory, right? It's just this bag that you have, like Diablo or something, where you just put things in the bag and it's just kind of more abstracted and just a grid of boxes. But this is like a more tangible thing where you're having to make harder decisions. And with like a bug, I think you can, well, I don't know this yet, but I'm assuming the bugs are, you can use those for potions with the witch or whatever, but you can at least sell them, right? You can sell them to the kid to get quite a bit of rupees from, but I'm sure there's other things you can do with bugs. But anyway,
what kid can you sell the bug to?
So there's the kid that has a very spastic animation that
that's
freaks me
down.
out when okay. He's like, I don't know what he's doing.
I didn't think of him as a kid, but yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I thought he was a kid. I don't know. Yep. He's in both timelines, right? So I think you can. I think it's probably just a surefire way to get rupees fast, because you sell the bugs for like 50.
Yeah.
So you can get quite a bit, but anyway, so with the blue flame, it's like I was surprised that they had another critical path thing you needed to use the bottles for to carry the blue flame in, because they haven't taught you that you can scoop up flames. I guess they kind of did with Pose, but that wasn't critical path. Okay. So
I hadn't done that yet. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's scooping up a flame. I definitely was stuck on that for a little bit because flames up to this point, they've taught you to use your Deku sticks.
Yeah. Or Deku.
Which you can't, or your arrows. Yeah. Oh yeah. The arrow's a good point, because I don't think that would have worked. Right. Even though later I thought of it at the time, I thought, oh, I have to shoot my arrow through the flame at one of the red things. That did end up being the case with real fire in the water temple, which I love. And is like a whole, cornerstone of Breath of the Wild. But yeah, with the blue flame, I guess it was a little bit tricky because it's a flame. You know what I mean?
Like, it's also weird because it's an area. It's also the only area of effect key, right? I mean, it's the only thing in the game where you kind of drop it and it spreads out. Like, you can use Din's Flame, but that's sort of like an area effect attack, and you sort of get this. This is different. It's like I stand near the thing I'm going to melt, and I'm going to let go of this blue flame stuff, which I also thought was, it's a little odd, but it works. It's not bad by any means. So,
yeah, their rule set on kind of area effect and like distance from things is a little bit tricky sometimes.
Yeah, I had to redo the puzzle. I had to redo the puzzle in the sliding block room like 3 times because I got up there. At one point I got up to, because you have to push the block to get the flame, and then you have to push the block to deploy the flame, and then you have to push the block a 3rd time to get up to, I don't remember, but
to leave, probably.
Yeah, maybe but I dropped the flame and I wasn't close enough to the stupid thing I was.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So I had to redo it. And I was that's why it stuck in my mind as like a weird area of effect thing. Because normally you would do a thing and it's not exhaustible either, right? It's like you can swing the hammer as many times as you want, so no big deal, right? So it's pretty.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's as a side note, it's not a note I had down, but I'm thinking of it now. It's really intriguing. It'd be really interesting to know how they ultimately make decisions on what tools make the cut for them, like what rule sets they use. You know what I mean? Like you said, like this one breaks some rules that you think are kind of already rules when it comes to other designs, like the hammer or the hookshot, right? Infinite uses, and then with like the bow and arrow or the slingshot, there's a currency there. There's an ammo count there, but it's an understood thing. Here it's like
you can refill it anywhere, right? Anywhere there's a plant,
right? Exactly. Yeah. So they have certain rule sets that they abide by for most of their tools, but then occasionally they break that, and it'd be really interesting to know how they decide which ones can break the rule and why. Right. There's probably we probably think there's some magical process for them to do it, which there probably isn't, and we give them
I think there credit, I would tend to think that there isn't, and there's sort of like, well, this this works, and like they could have made
someone has an idea.
Yeah, somebody has an idea. It's like, I'm sure it's like level design anywhere else. I think there's just maybe more input from the top, certainly at the time. I don't know if this is still true, but because the games are bigger now, but certainly Breath of the Wild, there's a lot more shrines or whatever, which are a lot smaller than the dungeons here. So there's a lot more of them. There's probably a lot less kind of individual oversight and et cetera. But at the time, certainly I would think that, that they, a producer, executive producer, whatever, project leader was playing through all of these things multiple times and saying, but what's weird is that the bottom of the well dungeon is about the same size as the ice cavern. And I don't think it's a path, although it does give you a tool, like I said. So I'm holding back on that because I just don't remember. But it's also like, and that tool is also weird in how it works. So when you get there, we'll talk about it in a couple of weeks. So,
well, it's funny because after you finish, not to jump ahead, but just really quickly because it may relate to the well. After you finish the water temple, Navi's global hint that she always has available, depending on what step in the world state you are in. It says something. She says something like, "We need to go find somebody who knows something about the sages," and I'm like, "What? Are you serious? That's your hint? I need to go find somebody that knows something about the sages?" I'm like, come on. So I don't know. Be aware. That's okay. At least that's the state I'm in. I don't know if that has to do with the well or immediately thought of the old lady.
It definitely doesn't have anything to do with the well, but yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what that is. I mean, I don't know if, anyway, we'll talk about that next time, yeah. So ice caverns, we get the boots.
Right? We get the heavy boots, right? Which you need to have so that you can walk underwater, right? And you also get the it becomes critical path to get the water. You had said using stores as clues was another thing, but you need the blue fire, rather not the water, the blue fire to bring out and either thaw the king or the store. So that you can get yourself a blue tunic as well, which is also going to.
And if you did that with the store, then you would need the big wallet,
the giant
because
wallet.
It's 300. Yeah. So there's a bit of weird. Yeah, my store point really quick. I can hit that, and then we can move on. The thing that I think danced around the last couple episodes when it comes to the store, and this actually applies to Child Link era as well. It didn't immediately occur to me that the store, one of the ways they're using the store. Now, obviously they seem to be using the store to some degree as a bit of a usability backdoor for players who either apparently there's an enemy that can eat shields, or something in the future. And so you might need to rebuy a shield. So that makes sense. But
we've already run into that. There's that thing that can suck you in and spit you back out.
And that can eat your metal shield?
That can eat your wooden shield, maybe. I don't remember if it can eat the metal shield, but it takes stuff from you. Yeah. And you can can't figure out how to defeat that enemy, which is not hard. But if you can't, or if you leave the dungeon for that matter, you have to be able to replenish those things.
Right. Yeah. So there's that, but with the tunics, right? Those are binary. Like you get a tunic and you don't really need another tunic, as far as we know. But as far as I know, but they are still sold in the store. But in both cases, both blue and red tunic, you see the tunics in the store before you can get them or before you need them. And so, yes, they might also be a backdoor for somebody who didn't figure out, I guess, to thaw out the king. But also because the first time you encounter those stores, they're there and they actually have text that says in child era, they have a text that says that this can only be worn by an adult. They're also clues. They're also giving you information that these things exist in a safe manner where you set a goal for yourself of I want to get that someday. And so there's actually, that there might even be something in the description about what it does. I don't remember, but that there's a red tunic when you, so you can kind of put two and two together. So the stores are actually, and then with the stores, there's also a blue flame in one of the stores that you can get, that you can see before you get, it's actually the store in Kakariko Village. That guy, before the potion lady in
Right,
that building.
right.
He has a blue flame for sale. And so you're like, wait, what's a blue flame? And I saw the blue flame before I went to the ice caverns. And so it's just kind of a interesting way. And actually, now that we know, now that they do sell a blue flame, I wonder if there is a purpose for it later.
Yeah, it makes me wonder too. So
yeah.
It also there's the question of whether that sort of thing actually prefigures what you see in Skyward Sword and Link Between Worlds. Right?
Yeah, that's true. That could be
right.
Yep.
Is that those things are available to you if you have the money or because you could spend a lot of time getting Skulltulas as a child. Like there's probably enough of those around to get the giant wallet. Or nearly. Like I can imagine you could just spend tons of time just doing all the side stuff as a kid pretty early, I would think, right? I would think that if there's 100 of them, I would expect they're more or less evenly split between the two, the two eras, the two sets of locations you can be in, things like that. So would be my guess.
It could be. So many of them are tool based though. Like you may not have enough tools. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. I mean that's this game's version of power leveling, right? Of giving you the side stuff to go do that you can, and hearts are the same thing, right? Like if you want to focus on hearts early.
Oh yeah. We'll talk about that. I had 11 as I was playing through the Water Temple. Which is
I have 11 after finishing the Water Temple, so you're one ahead of me, maybe.
Yeah, I mean that's good and bad.
Oh, by the way,
because of Dark
that
Link.
one. What's that?
That's good and bad because of Dark Link.
Oh, does he have the same number as you?
He sure does.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, I didn't even put two and two together. I was like, man, why does this guy have so many? This is ridiculous. Why would they do this? This is stuff.
That was definitely a question of why are you hitting yourself?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Dark Link is the whole thing, so it's like that's you can totally see why they. That was a great room, by the way. I love that whole. There's a lot.
Sequence. Yeah, let's we should get into the Water Temple so we can.
But really quick, I want to mention. So I did leave that heart in the Forest Temple. I went back.
Ah, okay, good.
Remember I said last episode, I was like, I don't remember picking up a heart. I went back just to see, and it's just sitting there. I didn't pick it up. A whole heart.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. So I mean, I don't know. That's just. I don't think that should be a thing. They should. You can't.
The heart should be in the blue light.
Yeah, I mean it's and essentially that reason that happened is because of camera, right? The way the camera was showing when I got control back, it was presenting the blue ring and not the heart. I didn't even see the heart.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyway,
it's really funny. I've been playing because we've been playing Path of Exile in our co-op group. I've had the feeling to play some Torchlight too. I've also been.
I was wondering why you were playing Torchlight. Yeah, it makes sense.
You can see that. So just as a natural evolution, like you can see them putting chests right where the exit portal is going to be. So it's impossible to miss the big reward chest from killing the boss, right? I mean, that's a thing that, is that you can do, of course, easier when you get this way pulled back camera. But you could still do it in this. You could make there be little side room where the blue light is, right? And then put the blue heart, the container right for it. I mean, there's certainly ways to do it. And nobody.
Well, I think that's one of those lessons that they
learn.
Will learn.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So at the time we were very likely to say as developers, I mean, if the player just doesn't look that way, that's on them. Right. I mean, I can remember having those conversations, I mean, or if the player does this, that's just because they're being a jerk. So you'd argue with QA about that stuff. Let's put those boots on and go to the Water Temple.
Yep. So and we also have the tunic now because you get it from thawing him out. So you do have to think to bring the flame out to, and he's obviously, they prominently show him being frozen.
Hard to miss. Yeah. Yeah.
So you, let's see, you generally you'll probably play the song to get there.
Yep. Right. That's definitely how I got there. Because I didn't know of any other way to get there because Zora's domain is all frozen. And
good point.
That first time you dive down and it is possible to get there without that, but I don't think most players would know that. I only knew that because I left and was like, I wonder how you get out of here, and found the ladder. So
yeah. So I mean, one of the funniest things about the beginning of that dungeon for me is you sink down into the lake, and then you go through the passageway, and then as soon as you get to the passageway, you have to take the boots off to rise up. It's like, oh my god,
that's obnoxious.
Here we go. So I assume the two. You tell me if I'm wrong, but because this is my first time through this particular dungeon, I assume the two things that has made this dungeon so notorious is having to take boots on and off constantly, and then the water level situation.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is actually the water level. I mean, I think the boots are an annoyance for sure. I don't think anybody loves that, but that actually, if that were the only thing, that would be pretty simple, because it would just be, you hit the pause button, you'd be on the shoes you just put on, you'd put the other ones on, right? I mean, I think that would not be a big deal. But I think the thing that really throws people off on this is there's a natural progression that has you raising the water level. And in all the dungeons prior to this, you either have rooms that sort of reset, or, as you enter and leave them, so, monsters and things like that. Or you have objects that are stateful that stay that for good. Like once you've solved this problem, you've solved this problem for good. Like the things in Jabbu's belly, the tentacles or whatever they are, the sinuous, windy things or whatever, different things that you change the state of, doors that you unlock, etc. Like once you've done that, you've done that. And the water level feels like more of one of those. Like, oh, I did the thing, and now I'm done doing the thing. Like I don't have to do that thing anymore. Because that's the way Zelda dungeons feel. This is the only one in this game, I believe. I don't remember the other two being weird this way. This is the only one where that big a change is something you get to do as many times as you want. And that you have to do it. I assume you have to do it. I actually don't know that. There might be a path through that doesn't.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there is. Yeah, that there may be a linear path where you don't have to.
I've never done it that way, because and the first time I played this game all the way through, in the last decade, I looked on a walkthrough. I was totally baffled, because I raised the water level up. I did some stuff on that level. I raised it up again to the top, and then I was like, I'm stuck. Like I need another key. I can't find another key. I had no idea. There's 3 things I can do, and then I can sink down and do 3 other things, but those are all blocked off or whatever. And I got totally lost. I baffled. And it's like, oh, you can, just play the thing again and lower the water level. I'm like, what? Impossible. Yeah, right. It breaks. Yeah, it totally breaks.
Yeah.
Breaks
your misconception or your expectations for Zelda.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, what's more is like it's the thing that I was actually surprised about that I think compounds the problem. And it's lessons learned potentially for them, is that each of the places where you play the song to change the water level, the only thing that those spots, it's not that you can go to any of those spots and change the level to the next level. Right. From where it's currently at.
Level. Right. Yeah.
It only goes to a specific level. So there's also a sort of inherent linearity to the way that you can.
Right.
So it's not even as flexible. Like, I don't know if you remember.
I had to do that multiple times, because I went into the center portion thinking maybe there's a way I can get to that, that eye that we talked in pre-show that I need to shoot. And I was like, oh, maybe I need to go in there and raise it. And I was like, it's no big deal. If I raise it, I can just lower it again. And then I went and did it, and I was like, oh no, I can't, because now the place where you play the song is in water and you can't blow the ocarina. And I was like, now I've got to raise it up again and then lower it all the way again. And I was just like, are you kidding me? So there's a lot of retreading of space. And
the experimentation is the trick, right? It's like whenever you have like entire level state designs like that, you need the experimentation part of it is the hardest part, because you don't always know what the level is going to do to the other side rooms and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of so, and it's so cumbersome to do it in this case. What's more is like they have this, I think, actually kind of neat design with those floating platforms that raise and lower with it.
Yeah.
And so when you are, when those platforms are down, they allow you to climb into the doorways, right? But when they're up, you can't, and you have your shoes on, you can't then get into the door. Do you know what I mean? Right. So it's like they went halfway there to some really kind of brilliant level design maneuvers. The other one is where they placed the hookshot anchors.
Right.
There's times when they will show you a hookshot anchor that you're like, why is there an anchor right there?
Yeah.
And then you kind of make a note of like, there's probably going to be a time when I'm going to be far away from this where I'm going to need to actually use it. And so they're really good at that stuff. That's kind of the example I was alluding to earlier in the episode of like sight line telegraphing on clues about, flow. So that, they're just the best at that. But yeah, it's, I was just surprised that the water leveling was a kind of a one-way direction, kind of, it's a hybrid linear. Like obviously the level I think would have been much better if it was just a linear.
Right. Yeah.
Like the water level is just kind of
linear. It's linearly repeatable.
Yeah.
You have to do the full cycle. If you it's like using a remote where it's like, oh, you missed it. Nope, sorry, went past it too far. I got to go all the way around the horn. Yeah. Right.
Just terrible design. Yeah. It's unfortunate. I mean, because I do like a lot about this level. Despite that, a lot of the side rooms I think were quite interesting. I love that platform. I wasn't a fan of the water elevators because you didn't, the fountains of water that come up that are elevators, right? Essentially,
there's nothing to tell you that they'll push you, right?
Yeah, and there's no clarity in the edging of it, right? So you're like, I'm going to fall off. Am I going to fall? Do I have to hit it at the right? So they're just like not clear enough. But other than that, like a lot of the water stuff I thought was neat, and the tension between the boots and taking the boots on and taking them on and putting them off, or putting them on and taking them off, and kind of like when you need to float up and when you need to sink down. I think a lot of those concepts are very, very cool.
Yeah.
But it's just they didn't quite get there. I wanted to actually do a callback to a game that we played on the podcast that came out 2 years earlier, and I'm really interested. I would love to know if it had any influence, and that's Tomb Raider. Because one of my favorite levels, though it is definitely a flawed level, I think I probably said this at the time, but one of my favorite levels of all time in any game is the Cistern,
right?
In that game.
Yep.
And that Cistern was about raising and lowering water, right? And like this whole concept of like of changing the state of the level, macro level, for that purpose. And I'm wondering if there was any influence there for them trying to do something like that, but a Zelda version.
Yeah, the thing that's really weird here is that the water level, it sort of it's not consistent in how it matters in some ways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like if you go off to the side rooms, like it's like fluid dynamics isn't quite right, which I know, this is a game with magic, so whatever. Like it doesn't matter. But it does feel like, I know where I am. Like I have a dungeon map that tells me I'm on B1 or whatever, and so I know I've just raised in the main chamber, the water level is up so that I can be on level 2 or whatever, level 3, whatever the levels are, of the dungeon. So that means in B1, all of it should be water. Like there should be nothing that isn't water, right? It should not be possible to climb out of the water on B1 because in theory, the whole dungeon would be full of water at that point. So that's another thing.
Is there like air? I was kind of headcanoning it, saying that
the air has nowhere to go. I guess. I mean,
yeah.
But
well, you're right. You're right in that they just aren't consistent. Like it's you would expect it to be more consistent, and that therefore, because it's not, it actually will create stuck points for people,
right?
Because they'll think one thing's going to happen,
right? Yeah. I mean, you just sort of I think it's more that it's leveraging the like where the main room will reset, like the bugs and the other enemies that are in there. There's sort of there's an implicit rule there that if you go across one of those boundaries, it matters. But in the area where you find the princess, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's tied to the main shaft, right? So that's what makes it really, really strange, is like in those rooms, which are different, they're, some distance from that central area, it matters what level it is. But in some of the other rooms that you can get to from that central chamber, it doesn't. Like it's the rooms are what they are, and that I guess, as you say, maybe it's something to do with air pockets, but I don't know. That's a
which version are you playing again?
I am playing the GameCube,
the
repackaging thing. With it,
it's not the remastered version though.
I don't know if it's remastered. It's running at, as we've mentioned, at 640, 480. I'm actually playing on a Wii, but with a GameCube controller.
It's the GameCube. That's that GameCube disc, the master version, or
you
get
from pre-order. Wind Waker.
The only reason I ask is I think that they, for the 3DS version, which I think is like a full remaster, a real there's new art on everything, and I think I remember them saying that they did some changes to the design for this dungeon in that one.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't surprise.
So it'd be interesting to see what they did for that.
I have your 3DS, and I'm not going to download Ocarina of Time onto it. Sorry.
No, I will. I wouldn't be surprised if
I'm playing the same game you are. It's just it's rendering and it's progressive scan. It's rendering higher res and it's in progressive scan, but it's otherwise exactly the same game. So
right, yeah, okay, yeah, that's what I figured. But anyway, I mean, as far as Water Temple goes, was there anything else? Dark Link. We just talked a little bit about like
the one thing that's really cool. He's also really he's a similar thing that they do with the sight lines, right? He's not visible until you cross the room, and then turn and come back. Which is just a
super
great thing,
creepy moment, and the illusion on the room is quite neat. It's like this feels very, and there's this whole like
you stepped into some weird extra dimensional space. You're like, what is going on?
Yeah,
tree in the middle.
Yeah, very neat. And of course, I had my theater geekery with the tree. I was thinking of Waiting for Godot immediately and stuff. It just has a very cool, feel to it. I feel like there's a specific homage to that in Breath of the Wild someplace where something like that happens. But anyway, yeah, that was neat. I mean, it's frustrating fight for me. I didn't really ever quite get a good rhythm with him, to be honest. Like I kind of just brute forced my way through and took a lot of hits, and I ended up having to go back to town to get more potions, to be honest. I didn't, even having 2 full potions, it took me a couple tries to finally get him. So I wish I know that there's some sort of pattern and telegraphing and feedback about how he's works, but I feel like it should have been clearer, and hilarious. I didn't even put 2 and 2 together that he would have the same hearts. I wish they didn't really tell you that, right? Like you just had to, because you didn't. I wish they would have shown his heart somehow. That would have been pretty funny.
No, they don't show it. Yeah, he was very difficult for me. I went through quite a lot of healing on that. In fact, he killed me once, even with a full fairy bottle. So I went and got 3, and then I still had to use 2. And I did start to get some of the patterns better. It had more to do with like dodging and swinging and stuff like that than it did, like going straight on and just trying to mash the button was not working. And then he would like jump up on top of your sword, and it felt like sometimes I was able to hit him in that and sometimes not. Like I feel like there are states there, but because he's just you in this, sort of translucent rendering style, I don't think that stuff comes across. Like it's not like a boss where you can literally change something about it to make it clear that you have some other thing you have to do now. So I felt pretty button mashy through the whole thing. Like I would find something that seemed to work, and then I'd do it. I'd get a couple hits on him that way, and then it wouldn't work anymore. I'd be like, okay, well, I thought I knew what I was doing, and then I'd be button mashing again for a while. Yeah, it was a little frustrating, but a cool idea and a great presentation. So
the thing that ended up working for me was actually not Z targeting him. It was to actually just be running around. Because I felt like when you're Z targeting with him, he was more matching what you were doing.
Yeah.
And countering, and so I would actually just kind of free form run around and just, like I said, slash wildly and kind of confuse him or something. It felt like a Dark Souls kind of cheesing the system a little bit.
Yeah, I tried that for a while. It was mostly because I found it like if you ever lose your Z targeting on him, now you're running away from him and you're facing away, and it's hard to get it back.
Definitely hard.
Yeah, it made it a little frustrating. I tried bombing him, didn't work.
So apparently because I had so much trouble, there was a point when I looked up a couple strats to see if there's anything I was missing. And it wasn't. It was just like, I just needed to keep doing what I was doing. But Din's Fire does do damage to him. Maybe I would, if I now that I know that there's hearts, that he has hearts, maybe it takes 2 hearts away. And then the other thing is the big sword apparently is pretty effective, which I didn't have.
I used the giant sword on him in my first battle, and I was like, oh, cool, this is working really well. And then it did what the giant sword does. It broke.
It broke?
I was like, oh no. Because it has a lot of range. It's a bigger sword. It has a lot of range, like, so he couldn't defend against it. So I could hit at him, and I hit him a few times that way, and then now I don't have that anymore, and I can't finish the fight. So and then I died. So
yeah, the really quick on the boot thing, on the boot swapping, which I think was obviously an annoyance, but as a lessons learned for them, essentially boot type things in the future just become one of the tools, right? So you just, the way that you
just bind him to it.
Yeah, you just have him on the equivalent of a C button in this game, right? Which is how they do it in the future. So, which makes sense, right? In fact, I think they might even do that with tunics too. But anyway, yeah. They learned that.
It's funny because with the other things that you change like that, you kind of don't need to change it frequently. Like you don't need to change your tunic, other than for the dungeon you're currently in, right? So you put on this tunic, and then that could be all you wear for ages, right? It's not something you're going to switch between. So that is kind of a weird thing. And it looks like there's another set of boots, which I also don't remember. Probably magnetic would be my guess, or something like that, but I don't honestly remember. So
there were magnetic boots in Twilight Princess, I think, right?
There were,
yeah. So, or maybe it's an optional thing. Who knows? I'm actually excited to spend, because I just haven't had time to spend, but excited to spend more time on that optional stuff and just kind of roam around, kind of in that Breath of the Wild way. Just kind of, especially once I have more, a lot of the tools.
Right. And then there's a final boss in here. I haven't fought it yet, but as soon as you were describing it to me in pre-show, I was like, oh yeah, I do remember that. And that's you getting to use the long shot to use that. I like the long shot a lot. I love that there is, sort of subtle cluing throughout. You already mentioned it in the temple, like, hey, that's too far away. Like, why can't I get to that? And like, it's a mystery that you have. Like, that's really strange. Like, maybe there's going to be platforms that stick out or something like that. And then you get an upgrade to your existing equipment, which has not been a thing up to that point, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. You talked a lot about the object-oriented quests. In this case, you're getting an object that just is overlaying on top of one of your existing objects. Which is it's just funny, that it kind of adds on to that, because they could have done that with the boots, right? They could have just said, you know what, your boots are just heavy now. I mean, they couldn't have because of how they designed the temple, but right, you could imagine something like that. And,
right.
Where it's just like, oh yeah, now your boots, whatever, they're magnetized or they're heavy or whatever, but you can still run in them, right? Or the tunics, like, why have different tunics? Like, they could have just made, okay, your tunic is now also this, like, you're impervious to fire and you can hold your breath. But they could have,
right?
And just overlaid it in one place. So it's funny that the hookshot is one. Is one, and then you get the long shot, and it's in the same place. And it's just, I don't know, it's funny stuff. So,
yeah, there again, it's like not always, consistent with with the way that certain systems work, and it doesn't seem to be, a bad thing necessarily all the time, but it is. They seem to want to like stick to rule sets so much,
right?
And then when they do something slightly different, it stands out.
Yeah.
Yeah. One small bone I wanted to pick with the hookshot, one of the hookshot puzzles. Once you get it, there is that section in the central chamber where you have to shoot the bow at that eye to open that gate.
Yep.
And then there's a hookshot hard point beyond that, and so before I got the long shot, and it didn't really kind of occur to me what the deal was with the distance thing yet. The timing of that gate, when you have the water level at that middle section where you can swim across to try to get through the gate, the timing of the gate is close enough to where if you try to run through it and roll through it, it feels like if I just am a little bit better at it, I can make it through.
Yep.
And so for a while it threw me off because I thought that was the solution.
Right.
Because it was one of the last chests that I didn't have, and I assumed there was a small key in the chest. And so I banged my head against that for a long time before I got the long shot. And then again, yes, it should have occurred to me that there's a hard point behind that. It must be, obviously the first thing I tried with the regular long shot or the regular hook shot was to go, but it's not long enough. So obviously that's there for a reason, but it just didn't, the timing of the gate is too close. They should have, that's an example of like, no, make it clearer that you can't.
Yeah.
You need a different solution. So it's the only bone that I had to pick for one of the puzzles, because you're definitely going to see that before you get the long shot, and you're going to try it as soon as you shoot the eye. You're going to like, oh, I need to go through there. Okay, this is a timing thing because they've taught me about timing things before. So anyway, yeah.
Yep, for sure.
That's my only bone.
Yep. All right. Well, you know what? We should just turn to email. I sent you two. I don't know if we could do that many, but we'll at least do one a piece. Maybe we'll do two a piece. We'll see how they go. I don't think there's a lot of questions this time, so it'll be good. I should say before we move on to that, a couple things. One, we will do the next two temples, really the final two temples, the last two sages. And then we're going to have a week where we do any side content we care to, sort of like Chrono Trigger. And then finish the game with Ganon or Ganondorf, and then or Ganon. I don't know. I can't remember exactly how it ends either. I do remember some witches. The other thing is that we did have a singing review, sort of this week, but I don't know the song well enough, so I have it. I had never heard it before because I am an old person. In fact, I did not even know until last year that this song was the origin of a particular term, and that this will all be explained next week. But that will be next week. I need to listen to it a bunch of times so that I actually can do it. It's great. There's a singing part and a rapping part, so it's all good, man. So that's coming. That is coming. Those of you, and for those of you who don't like that, now you know. You can skip it. So thank you for that review, and we will get to it. It'll be sort of a Christmas bonus for you next week. And we have some email to devgameclub@gmail.com. Why don't you go ahead and read the first one, sir?
Okay. This is a funny mail. Fishing mini games ? From Milo Kent. Double question marks. Dear Brett and Tim, I despise fishing mini games. Fishing mini games destroyed my dreams. Once upon a time, I believed I could do anything. What a fool I was. Back in those days, I was just a wee child with starry-eyed ambitions of 100%ing Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut. A single desire drove my life: to witness that secret ending hinted at by the game's opening cinematic. I blasted through Sonic's levels, flew through Tails's, punched past Knuckles, hammered beyond Amy's, exploded E102s, and then there was Big the Cat. I cast my bait into the first pool, but didn't catch anything. I tried again to no avail. For 2 hours, I failed to catch anything. I never picked up that game again. My life became a downward spiral into chaos. I sold my neighbor's dog and a left kidney to afford paying my babysitter to beat those levels for me. But she, too, was no match for Big the Cat. I was a failure. Fishing minigames taught me the cold, hard truth that my dreams were nothing but the brittle imaginings of a little kid. What I'm trying to say is, please do a fishing episode. Pretty please. With deep wishes and well-beings, Milo Kent, if that is your real name.
Real name. Yeah, fishing mini games, man. I feel like you totally could. I mean, I wasn't kidding when I said I think you could do it wouldn't be an hour-long podcast every week, but I think you could do a substantial podcast run of just fishing mini games down through the years. The hard part would be finding them all, because I'm sure there's many, and you'd have to find them.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some sites out there that are devoted to just this, especially because of Milo's point here. Like, yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, that's a hilarious story though. That was like the fishing mini game was what ended up. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
it might have been the hardest thing in Okami for me, to get all 100 pearls.
I don't remember fishing in that game.
Yeah, there's a whole fishing thing there's like a bridge, and then like you can go down to the side of it, and then you can fish there. And there's I
remember that.
I think there's one, like you have to get this one like legendary fish out of there or something like that. I vaguely remember like there was a special fish in there that you had to catch that had swallowed a pearl. And that's why it was so big or something like that. Like that there was a whole like tied in with everything. And getting that was just the worst. It just took it was so much fishing. I mean, I like the fishing, so it was kind of fine, but yeah, like there's fishing in Dark Cloud 2.
I mean, we could find like the most infamous fishing mini games and do like we could do an episode on just those. That would be pretty funny.
There's fishing in Jak and Daxter.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It does. It's a lot of work. I played Jak and Daxter last summer. And they had a remaster on the PS3 that I picked up for a song, and I played the first one, and I got to a fishing mini game, and I was like, wow. And I think it's Critical Path, and it's very hard, and you fish like with a net, and it's like catch these fish but not these other fish, and it's really, really hard. And I was like, this is exactly when I say that your variant gameplay should be easy, because you just want to give the flavor of doing something different. This is what I'm talking about. I was like, and it might have been literally that game that gave me that insight of like, I came here to play a platformer, and you've got me waggling around the controller to try to, move it into one of, a few positions. Like it's such and such wide. I don't think it's 3 positions. I think it's analog, but it's basically 3 positions the fish are coming down, but I have to catch 20 of these fish, but none of these fish, right? Or whatever, and it's just brutal. Yeah. Fishing mini games can be they can make or break you.
Such a weird thing.
Torchlight has a fishing mini game.
Oh yeah, right.
Anyway.
Oh boy. Well, thanks, Milo. It was a good story. Yep. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that kidney. Whatever. It was the neighbor's dog, right? Anyway, so I have one here from Ben from Iowa Zaug. The subject is Zelda Timeline. He says, "Hey, listen. Tim's research of the Zelda Timeline reminded me of something. Many centuries ago, in March of 2017, I wrote in because you guys were playing Link to the Past, and Tim in episode 54 provided the Fireside Chats idea, and I loved it. It's still a much better idea than the multiple timelines. I love Ocarina, but I have no desire to go back due to length and too many, oh, right, I don't like this part moments. During quarantine, my wife played through Link to the Past on Switch with the oh-so-wonderful rewind feature. I had never played this one, and it made me realize how many Zelda features I thought originated in Ocarina actually originated in Link to the Past. I must not have paid enough attention 180 episodes ago, or just forgot some of the findings and lessons. Thanks, Ben from Iowa Zao. Yes, we should remind folks we have played another Zelda on this podcast. You could also do a podcast series of a year of just Zelda games. But yeah, it's true. Like, I got to this and I actually got stuck in exactly the same part in, well, I don't know about stuck. I forgot exactly the same thing. There's a wall you have to bomb. You also ran into this in the water temple that I had, just because of how I played it. I started this dungeon. I saw it. I said to myself, oh, I should remember that's there. And then didn't finish the dungeon in one go. Saved, came back the next day, and had totally forgotten that there was a bombable wall that I had seen.
Yeah.
And passed by it again, but the camera wasn't facing the right direction, so I missed it because I knew where I was going, so I oriented myself deliberately, like, all conspired. And I'm like, this is why people don't like the water temple. It's things like this. It's just very tricky. And some of that is that state stuff of like, oh, well, I think I've progressed past a thing. So anyway, but it's a game that I'm finding very rewarding a second time through, but I get it. Life is short. So I don't know how I used to have a job. I don't know how I'm going to have a job again.
Well, I mean,
playing games and D&D and reading. So.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to have some rude awakenings when we have to actually reconstruct lives. Yeah. So, I mean, to his timeline point, though, all that being said of the timeline stuff that I got from the encyclopedia that I talked about, as I also said in that episode, it feels like what they're doing with Breath of the Wild, as I said, when they're kind of like rebooting, resetting, retconning, whatever you want to say, it feels like they kind of are moving to, they could very easily move to that fireside chat feel where it's just like all timelines are possible. You know what I mean? It's just like it's all just like the past, it's just these events that happened and there really is no like necessary logic to it. The fact that Breath of the Wild could have occurred in any of the timelines tells me that they're kind of like, they also realized how crazy this has gotten and they're like, wait a second. Let's just ground up, rebuild this from the ground up kind of thing. So let's fingers crossed on that, because I feel like Breath of the Wild does have that really cool feel to it. Because when you wake up, it feels like it's a new era of the same. It's the Groundhog's Day feel, right? Like it's just happening all over again. It's all it's just that just happens every 100 years. So
man. So many Zelda games I still have to play. We can squeeze in two more. These are both short. So let's go ahead and bang them out. You have one here from Sam.
Okay, Zelda is subject Sam Thomas. Hi guys, your discussion of the revolutionary nature of camera/cinematic elements in this game was fascinating. I know nothing about this stuff and didn't notice any of it when I played the game as a kid upon release. I suppose for the uninitiated, it all just feels like magic. Tim's discussion of the timeline reminded me of this video game where Brian David Gilbert explains the timeline. Not only does he present what Tim shared, and Tim, you did a great job in only a few minutes. Thank you. But he also tries to insert every single piece of Zelda media. The whole thing is ridiculous, but worth a watch. Thanks for the great show, Sam. Okay, I'll seek that out. I would actually like
notes. I will send you the link, sir. I don't think it's in what I forwarded, but I will send you the link. It is very funny because he also sent an image, like a frame from it, and it had like Oracle Seasons, Oracle of Ages, Link Between Worlds. Okay, got it. Triforce Heroes? No. And then Zelda 2, and then there's something called the Crystal Trap. The Shadow Prince. Oh, I guess those are Valiant Comics. Legends of Zelda TV. I mean, it just keeps going. At the bottom, there's something called Ripened Tingle's Balloon Trip of Love. I don't know what any of that is, and I'm a little baffled. But yeah, it's very funny.
Tingle.
That guy's videos are generally quite funny. He's the I think it's Polygon, right? That he's with.
Oh, okay. I didn't
realize
that was
did that
same
super Halo thing where he read all the Halo media.
Yeah, got it. Yep, he read all the books.
He read all the
books.
Right, yeah, that was quite funny as well. So I bet that this is good. So that'll be in the show notes for folks. I will hit one last mail, then we'll be done. This is subject playing the Ocarina of Time. It's from Vlad. He says, "Hey guys, the Ocarina in game has 12 notes, kind of like a real sweet potato ocarina. The 5 notes mapped on the face buttons are the pentatonic scale. So if you want to hear more amazing music written with a few notes, check out some blues." And he gives a smiley. Yes, I'm aware of the blues. Thank you. But I think that's great. I will say, side note, Kirk Hamilton, who wrote our show music, he has a podcast called Strong Songs. He did a great, I don't know if it was like a question bucket episode, but he did a great one about the blues, about the progression of blues music, and it's amazing. 12 bar blues or whatever. So seek that out if you're interested about the blues. Anyway, he says you can modify the pitch with the stick and triggers to get the other notes. You should try it out. Cheers, Vlad. P.S. Love the show. Keep
Whoa.
Yep. So they also did the thing I said that most people would do. They just didn't make you have to do it.
Yeah.
It's just in there for fun, for completeness.
Right. Well, and it could have been a usability discovery, right? They could have gone through playtesting and said to themselves, well, we have it fully works. It's a real instrument. Let's not do that. Yeah. Let's just focus on these things and simplify it, which is exactly what Nintendo would do, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's true. Maybe they originally thought, let's make it a full ocarina, and that was the starting implementation. Yeah, and they simplified. Yeah, it's very, very possible. I should totally try that out because now I'm kind of quietly amazed by that. That was one of the things when we played Ultima Underworld that I did was I would play. I can't remember if I played the Final Fantasy VII fanfare. I think when I would defeat a particularly difficult enemy because it had flutes and stuff, but it had 10 or 11 notes on it. So I played Joy to the World on it. Anyway,
nice.
All right. Well, thank you to those 4. We have more. If you haven't yet heard your email, it's just because we're spacing them out, and some of them are longer. So we will get to those. If you're emailing, we had a game suggestion this week. I typically don't read those on the air, but I will reply. So you'll see an email from me at some point. Thank you for those. You can find us on the web at www.devgameclub.com, where you can find our show notes and lists of all the games we've played and all the interviews and everything in the history of the show, as well as my book reviews. And our intro and outro music. Oh, I'm sorry. And on Twitter at DevGame. I almost forgot the JR at the end. Where you can also find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton and commissioned by friend of the cast, Aaron Evers. Thanks so much for remembering your vows this week, and good night.
Good night. You're definitely dating yourself when you still put the www before our website. I mean, you're definitely old when you're still doing that.
The 90s.